Today is the 4th day of the May 1986 retreat. There are two announcements before we get into the talk. One note was handed to me. We have put a notice on the board saying that the septic system gets overloaded with heavy use. Please help by flushing toilets infrequently and by being sparing with water in the showers. Maybe using flushing toilets infrequently would mean that after the second urination, maybe we'll flush. We don't want to develop odors either in the house. The sparing use of shower water. One may be so used to a long shower that one forgets there's a hot tub right next to it. That's one reason we have the hot tub, to save water. Before this retreat started with its glorious weather, there was enormous amounts of rain, which is hard on the leach field. Some of you may have noticed the odor coming from it, which is a sign of overload. The other announcement, I don't know whether it's an announcement, concerns something that was said in the opening talk, but several people were not there at the opening talk who are here now. And it is about quietness in the sitting room. In sitting here in this particular room, can we all agree not to move if possible? We have opened retreat up to all kinds of modes of being, to sitting other places, to walking, to not being here at all if one doesn't wish to camping, taking cushions into the woods, sitting on the balcony. And for this particular room, we would like to provide for ourselves, for each other, quietness, which means, if at all possible, not to change posture during one round of sitting. There are exceptions, of course. People come back from meeting. We try to install a solid floor so that the walking is quiet. Can one be aware of the sounds of walking? One may walk quite lightly on the floor. One can thump. In sitting down, coming in from a meeting, can it be a minimum of adjusting and readjusting and rustling around with the clothes? Also coming in on time, if possible at all, if one wishes to sit in this room. We don't have precise time signals like bells after which there is no moving. We do the clappers, or whatever you call that thing, wooden block. And then there is some period of time in which to get in here and get settled, and to remain within that time, not come at one's own time. As to moving during a sitting, if the nose drips, one has a Kleenex there to catch that, or hold the hand in front of the mouth by coughing. We have been informed that this aids in non-distribution, or not as wide a distribution of germs if one holds the hand in front of the mouth. So this is something too that can be done noisily or quietly. regarding the moving, the changing of posture. There are meditation centers where one can change a posture during sitting, but just because one can do this in other places here, most people who sit in here would like it quiet. So, if the posture becomes uncomfortable, the knee, the back, whatever, the ankle starts hurting, what is one going to do about it if one has agreed by sitting in here not to move over this kind of a thing, about this kind of a thing? It has an incredible possibility of finding out what happens if we don't do what we've been doing all of our life and are still doing, namely doing something about something that is uncomfortable. And I'm not extolling the virtues of pain. Please don't misinterpret what is being said. There's no virtue in having pain. That's another invention of the human mind. But if there is pain, discomfort, tension, someplace in the body, can one just listen to it as it is without doing something about it? Allowing the doer to go into complete abeyance. Maybe quite a discovery that pain can take care of itself. Or trying to do something about it very often makes it worse. Shifting the posture doesn't really help. The next posture is uncomfortable too, or one would get a cramp because one is trying to do it quietly. The only thing that would help in a case like this is get up and go. But then if everybody at the moment a pain comes, gets up and goes, we'd have a coming and going in here. That's why the next round one doesn't have to sit in here. Now you may say, and it has been said to me and maybe to others, I've heard it mentioned, why are you so obsessed with silence or with quietness? I think each one of us has to look for ourselves whether there's an obsession there. Obsession meaning I have to have that, and if I don't have it, I'm going to go nuts. Or whether one may find the really inexpressible beauty of a quiet period of time in which human beings can actually be together and yet not intrude upon each other and upon the natural sounds around us. Granted, there are airplanes and cars. We can't do anything about that. There's no perfection. If there is indeed a sound, very often one may move without being aware of it. One becomes aware afterwards that one has scratched one's head. It happens habitually, automatically, unconsciously. If one has made a sound and someone else hears it, how does one hear that sound? Does one get annoyed over this person not abiding by the rules? Then a train of noise is set in motion in the mind, which far exceeds the sound of the hand scratching the head. It's not a rule. It's not a regimentation. hope we understand it this way. If one gets sick to one's stomach and feels one has to throw up, then of course to leave the room. And we've said, for the benefit of people who weren't here for the first talk, during a talk, feel free to change the posture, because it's a different thing. And if there's tremendous pain in the ankle or in the bottom, then to have to deal with this pain and be with it may distract from listening to the talk. May or may not. One may not even feel it, and afterwards think, oh my God, how did I sit through that? So we can learn with everything that happens, to ourselves and to others, to each other. See it, understand it, and then drop it, not carry it around. There are several possible topics for a talk. Very frequently it's brought up in meetings, what it means that attention is without effort. Isn't there effort? Doesn't there have to be initial effort? So that is one topic for a talk. The other topic that has been brought up severally is about attachment. What is attachment? And as one person asked, going back into the world, in quotation marks, can one really live without attachment? What does it mean to live detached? This was the question. And this is what we're going to talk about and see how long it takes. I think before one would go into a question, can one live without attachment? Doesn't one need to be intimately, minutely clear about what attachment is? Not as a general principle or idea, but observing it from moment to moment, because there may not be a moment going by without attachment to something. So what is attachment? What is it that this word attachment actually refers to in our living, in our mental processes, in our relationship? It's for all of us right now to look at this. Because it's our problem. Attachment is our problem. Let's say it's mealtime. One has this dish of good food in front of one. One item particularly tastes so good. Maybe it's the fresh bread with that crust. The fragrance of it, the texture of it, the taste of it. Is that just the chewing, the tasting, taking in the fragrance, the feel of it, and the swallowing of it? Or, at the same time, does a thought arise, a visualization of that bread basket out there? For instance, it may take different forms. And the thought, I must have more of that. Or just the piece one is eating, not being with this one bite of bread, and the whole process as we've described it, and that one can be with. It's for each one. There's nothing mysterious or magical about just being with one bite of bread from beginning to end. But it usually doesn't work this way. It tastes good, and the thought of the more takes over the mind. And that thought has a powerful dynamics. As a dynamics away from what one is doing toward getting more. Either getting more from another place or swallowing quickly to get the next bite. And maybe during sitting, when it gets very boring, one is getting hungry, often feeling bored, the mind projects stuff that could be more interesting than what is happening. The bread basket appears in the fantasy. And wanting that, and looking forward to it. And it gives a certain vitality at this moment to the sitting, looking forward to that bread again. I'm just using this as an example. I think there is no end to examples one can find for oneself. The attachment to the memory of what was very pleasurable. And using that memory, not intentionally, it comes up when the brain scans around for something exciting or interesting, for a fix, I've called it. Brain is scanning for a fix, and here is this memory of the bread, the looking forward to it, or the whole meal, take what you wish. And getting inspiration, energy, getting a fix from the memory. And since it works, one doesn't have to be with what is unpleasant or boring, painful. It works, one can use the memory to boost the whole organism. There comes attachment to that thought, to that memory. What is it, not trying to see what is it that we're attached to, but what is it that we are not attached to? One's own image that we've talked a lot about, what one is, how one likes to see oneself, how one wants to be approached or treated or seen by others, what one wants to become or be. one's negative images, we're attached to that. We bring it up in the mind all the time. Or the moment it's questioned or hurt, the image, out of attachment to it, we defend or offend. Or we withdraw. If we find people are hurting our image left and right by either not recognizing us, approving of us, or being aggressive toward us, hurting us, criticizing us, then we withdraw with the image to protect it. Because unless there is at least a spark of awareness, there is identification, attachment to this image. We are that. If somebody injures it, that person injures me. That's how we feel about it, isn't it? Because there comes the whole vast realm of attachment to another person. To a man, to a woman. To a child. Why does one get attached to another person in the first place? Because attached we are. Does it take the same start that we went through with imagining the good food, the breadbasket? The feeling of inadequacy, loneliness, unhappiness, boredom, doubt in one's image. Whether one is really a likable, lovable person or not. Or, well, we've said before, even a negative image we attach to, or attachment to a positive image, wanting that reaffirmed. And there is another person who corresponds to the image one has of a person one would like to be attached to live with, to be with. And that person paying attention to one. Gives an immediate, incredible boost to the self-image, doesn't it? If a person whom one finds beautiful, admirable, impressive, having all the attributes one has dreamed about, how this person really is, one doesn't know. An image is already projected, and that person pays attention to one. What does it do to the image? It wipes out, at least for a moment, all the doubt about oneself. It wipes out the boredom because excitement is in the air. Yearning to be together. There's no feeling of loneliness now, there's anticipation of anything but loneliness, togetherness. Tremendous surge of energy and feeling of well-being. And this gets remembered. This feeling is stored in the memory. The person is not there. One remembers the person. One remembers the feelings. And these memories, just like looking forward to the next meal, give a fix. You may think this is a very cruel and unromantic way of looking at this, but I think it has value. If I'm off, please tell me so. Remember myself early in life, I've mentioned it before, but I'll say it again. I always knew people who haven't heard it. With a boyfriend, first boyfriend, who wasn't there, of course, at that time. Boyfriends were in the war, far away. There were just letters, and awaiting each letter, and racing through the letter, just trying to find those words which express love for me. And of course the pain of not being together, the pain of maybe losing this person, made me wonder what this was all about. And I discovered, at least for myself, I don't know what this holds for other people. Somebody once strenuously objected to this kind of thing. Discovered that in looking for what I thought this person's love, or in loving this person, I was loving myself. I wanted to have confirmation of myself as a lovable, etc., adored, admired, well-described person. And that gave a tremendous rush of good feeling, coupled always with fear and sadness, fear of losing this, fear of losing this person who was doing this for one. Because there was also fear for the person dying. But I think if I'm honest, I was much more concerned about myself than about this other person. I hardly knew him. And the attachment to this person, to the image of this person, to the whole emotive thing that this released in one. Human beings are lonely. I think this is a fact. Lonely because all of us cling to this paper self, this poster self. Poster, I say, because it's all these images, like posters, what we are. What we think we are, what we want to be, what we want other people to see us as. All of our past pleasurable and unpleasurable experiences as memories are all in this package of self, which is a highly unstable, insecure, insufficient, incomplete, lonely affair. And out of that we seek completion, fulfillment, through another person. That's very much the case. Maybe not through another person, in rarer cases, or maybe through person and ideas. Through ideas, through occupation, through job, through joining a movement. And if what one is finding and attaching to gives some temporary fulfillment, good feelings, then that attachment continues. Attachment meaning a tremendous involvement of memory and thought. Are you looking? Are you seeing that? When one is not with a person, thinking of the person. When one is with the person, thinking of how it was, comparing. Maybe a dissatisfaction setting in because it isn't how it used to be. If the person is getting interested in somebody else, then this total agony of despair, pain, jealousy, feeling of abandonment, and the loneliness again, which was never ever dealt with through attachment to another person. And which cannot be fulfilled by another person. It can be overshadowed or ignored by being with someone. But if that someone leaves or dies or changes, grows indifferent, there's the loneliness again. So we do attach to people, things, ideas, movements, activities, jobs, out of fear of that loneliness, of that utter feeling of insufficiency, incompleteness, emptiness, lackingness that all human beings have someplace or other, buried most of the time and then surfacing. Maybe not so buried. In doing this work, it comes up. And isn't it clear? I don't mean just intellectually, logically clear, but by looking, that the fear has to persist into the period of attachment, the fear of loneliness, because one may lose what one has attached to. It's not secure. One can kid oneself that what one has is forever, either property, money, position, or a relationship sealed in a church or through a wedding vow. But there's no security in this. I don't think I have to expand on that at all. As long as that self, that feeling of separateness, which is our attachment to our images of what we are, as long as that persists, is not questioned, is taken for granted, then there will be attachment and fear of loss, fear of abandonment, jealousy, hatred. greed. It comes all out of that. We see that. This person who was asking, is it possible going back home into the world to live without attachment? And the next question was something like, how is it really to live detached? That is speculation, isn't it? One wants another picture of another state, a detached state. What use is it if one doesn't understand the state of attachment? And one can have been hurt so much through attachment that one decides, I will no longer have any attachments, I will live a detached state, and then withdraw from people, withdraw from things, and maybe settle in a hermitage and live with all of one's ideas, attached to one's ideas about detachment. And there will be other attachments, most of the time, of a spiritual nature. It's still not questioning the self that is withdrawing, the self that is hurt and that doesn't want to be hurt anymore. It is not questioning whether there may be indeed a way of living in which there is no self and no hurt, and therefore no need for withdrawal or attachment. But we don't want to go that far, that deep. That gets too threatening or too esoteric, sometimes people say. Also, immediately there's a fear voiced by one person. Does it mean then that I shouldn't enjoy anything anymore? What's going to happen to my pleasures? When we started out with one bite of bread, can that be happening freely? I hate to use the word attentively, it sounds so moralistic. Aware, with awareness, clear, open, from beginning to end. The taste, the whole thing, and there's joy in that. And then be done, not start storing the memory of it. Or not, while eating, already eating one's memories. I remember the very first time having left Switzerland. I was here for 5 years before going back home. And having gotten adjusted to this country, and then the flight back over, and being back in that country, which is an incredibly beautiful country. But the joy of being there wasn't enough. I still remember I told myself all the time, I'm in Switzerland, I'm in Switzerland. The idea had to come in there too. It wasn't enough just to be there. And that's dangerous, because the mind is divided. And it's setting itself up for future and present trouble. So the problem is not the depth of living and being with a moment completely. The problem is the storing it up for future use as a memory, as thought, as inspiration, as stimulant, just as any addiction. Being addicted to one's memories and images. And to test out, let us test out when we are with people. Do we really see these people, or do we see our stored pictures of them, what they are like? Because we don't want them to be the way they are. We want them to be like a picture that gives us satisfaction, stimulation. And of course, this is what happens when one begins living together. First day or week or year or 5 years, then one finds out how one really is, how the other person is. And there may be mourning over a shattered picture. And therefore a new yearning for a new picture. Come back to this question: is it possible to live without attachment? Without attachment? Not using that word detached. That sounds like a reaction formation. I don't want to be attached, so I am detached. Can one see from moment to moment attachment to image? When I'm not here, when I'm not with what I'm doing, what am I doing? What is the mind doing? What is it? What is it projecting? To provide interest or stimulation or energy. Remember one time, as another example, driving to Rochester, through quite nice country. It was a beautiful day like today, clear, sparkling green, the trees. The winding road was a side way of coming here. And on the horizon was a clear line of billowing clouds, which immediately suggested mountains, snow-covered mountains. And with no intention, no conscious intention, realizing, though, at this moment that the mind was ready to go into the memory trip again of Swiss mountains, hiking around in the mountains, the vacation atmosphere and so forth. But seeing it and not entering into it, with no regimentation or prohibition whatsoever. The seeing was the ending of it, and there were the clouds. Nothing wrong with those clouds. They don't have to be Swiss mountains. But that's not the point. The point is, where is one? Is one here undivided, or is one with one foot in one world and with another foot in the dream world? And therefore split, inattentive to the driving, every time we indulge in a memory that gives us pleasure, we strengthen that memory, we strengthen that process. That is physiologically documented. Every thought association that is repeated, the second time it's thought about, is a strengthening of these synapses in the brain. That's what learning is. That's why we learn 1 and 1 is 2, because after a while something is strengthened in association. One memory with another, one association with another. And I think I said it before, this is what I think addiction is. Needing to do this all the time, rather than being with what is. And not seeing. You cannot possibly see. The eyes aren't open when the movies are going on. And there's some kind of an inward viewing. A split of energy. And the beauty of the first time that this came into awareness, that I described, the beauty of it is that the seeing takes care of it. There had to be no choice. Oh no, I'm not going to go into that now. Seeing was the ending. And it was effortless. Had to be no resistance to entering into that memory, that I will resist that temptation. It had nothing to do with that. It was seeing what it meant. Directly, existentially, not via a thought process. If there is no seeing, then we slide into that pleasurable memory. That's where we are most of the time. Pleasurable or unpleasurable. Unpleasurable memories have a tremendous, we're attached to that too. Doomsday. What's going to happen to us, the thoughts about that. Having to think about what may happen to us is an attachment. So how can one live without attachment from moment to moment? I don't know whether this is a good question. As already setting up an ideal state and a goal of which we will all dismally fail. And then there comes what comes with failure. I'm no good at this. This whole thing doesn't work for me, may work for somebody else. Just watching. And also watching our resistance to it and questioning that resistance. Not just saying, well, I just don't want to watch. Well, you can do that too. That's up to each one. But if one wants to find out about oneself, why is one resisting? Again, the attachment to the image of me being together with my memories, that's what holds me together, that's what I am. The fear that if I watch and let go of things, I'll fall apart. There's a real fear of that. I'm going to fall apart. What falls apart is all the posters. and this pseudo pleasure derived out of the flattering of a poster. What are we without image? Isn't that a pressing question? What would it be to live with, and I don't mean imagining it, but trying it out. By seeing an image and not taking the fix that it gives. Seeing the whole thing that we've talked here, maybe not too clearly. You can bring it up in meetings, and we'll go through it again. Sometimes in this one-to-one relationship, where you can ask questions too, and then maybe it can be more clarified. To see an image and to see it as an image. Not, well, I have this image and there it is, it doesn't go away. One doesn't see it as an image. If one sees that, it's finished. One may feel quite bare, not knowing what one really is. That's a good state to be in. But we shy away from that. It's like a crustacean coming out of the shell, totally vulnerable. Also, we think what is vulnerable is the image. That's what's vulnerable. And that's what gets hurt time and time and time and time again, and then does all its things, trying to get protection. That's a good time to observe the image, is when one gets hurt. Somebody suggests something to be done or criticizes something, immediately hurt, immediately snapping back. That's the image. Watch it, test it, open it up. If one had no image of who one was, that one was so good or needed to be approved rather than criticized, if that wasn't there, one would at least listen. But the person may be off the wall, that would become clear. Or it could be clarified. One could sit down and talk together. Rather than walking, either hurting each other or walking sort of pussyfooting around each other. Around each other's images. I think the beauty and depth of living can only reveal itself when there is no attachment to image. Then the shade goes up, the wall goes down. And then there may be love that one doesn't need to get from someone else. It's there then. As long as we crave love from somebody else, I would question that. The whole process, what is going on? we will end here for today.